What's going on, everyone? Tayler Kyles here for CLNS Media, coming at you with another episode of Pat's Daily, brought to you by our good friends at Game Time. Today, I'm joined once again by a very special guest and friend of the show. There's been a lot of talk about the Patriots offense this offseason, but we're not paying nearly enough attention, I think, to the defensive side of the ball. So, to help me break it down, I have got the owner of MatchQuarters and the head of football ops at Field Vision, doing great work at both places, by the way, Cody Alexander. Cody, how you doing, brother? And welcome back.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Doing great, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So before we get started, I know you did a deep dive into the Patriots defense, did some great work about Kyle Duggar, the different concepts. So from all your work, tell me what you kind of gleaned from the Patriots defense, what maybe your biggest takeaways were from what they did in 2023.
Yeah, the thing that I thought, and we had hit on this kind of earlier the last time that we talked, like I think we talked right after the draft before the season, was just the multiplicity within the backfield, the defensive backfield, primarily the safeties that they were able to do. Having four guys that you can rotate, and then really not even counting Mapu, who is kind of that pseudo quasi linebacker safety. He can move down or kind of a box guy. But to me, the one thing that sticks out when you watch the Patriots is just the multiplicity at which that they can play at. And a lot of that comes from Bill Belichick being able to, we want to make the offense left-handed and using those safeties more as tools and matchup to then necessarily just scheme.
And I'm actually curious, a little off script here, but when it comes to their nickel package, one of my favorite things that they'll do is when they have like their third corner out there, but they kind of want to have more of a big nickel type of front. They'll actually have their slot corner was Miles Bryant. Going to be interesting to see who it is this season, but they'll have him actually play safety in their split field coverages and then have another safety come down and play that slot role. What did you notice when it came to when they actually use those situations and kind of the impact of that adjustment?
Yeah, so part of the problem with having a nickel corner on the field is that you're going to get kind of ran at, right? So when you can have a guy who can play man coverage from depth, this is essentially what you're getting there, is that they would like flip, and he mostly did it with Peppers, sometimes with Duggars, but you would just see kind of like a flip call, right? Like, and mostly it was to a tight end, or if they wanted to stay in nickel and it was 12 personnel, how can we get a bigger body down there, but we don't have to change personnel? Because the NFL is such a chess match in that sense of like your personnel, how are we matching up with our personnel? The one thing, and this is the one concern, and I know we'll talk about this later, but like having Bill Belichick as the mad scientist and being able to move guys around, that little piece of it I thought was really interesting last year, how he was able to use the nickel, but then also those four safeties. Sometimes it was Duggar and Peppers, sometimes it was Mills. You have these you have different guys in at different times and in different spots, so you never knew week to week where those guys were actually going to be.
And when it actually came to those safeties, simply Duggar, Peppers, and Mapu, I feel like there's been so much discussion about, well, you got to make Mapu a linebacker, and they don't have a free safety. I personally felt like Peppers was actually doing an exceptional job at free safety, although obviously, like you mentioned, he'll bump into the slot, and you want him to have that versatility. Is there a certain place where you feel like each of those guys, again, Duggar, Peppers, and Mapu, where they really align best, or do you feel like they truly are kind of wild cards who can succeed wherever they're at?
I think Mapu's more of your box guy. But like Duggar and Peppers, if they're used correctly, I think Peppers he had a tweet a couple months ago that went viral. Greg Williams had him at like 30 yards deep playing like post safety, with the Browns, which he was never like that. Peppers is actually more or less like a Tyrann Mathieu who, he was really more of a Sam linebacker. He was more of a nickel. I mean, even Don Brown talked about he had to change the name of a Sam linebacker to Viper to get Peppers to really buy into playing that. No, we're going to move you around. We're going to blitz you. You're going to be around the box. Now, the thing with Peppers is he's not a center field safety in the old school sense. He's not a deep half cover two safety. Can he do that? Yes, he can. Is that where you need to place him 100% of the time? No, he's really good at, playing as a quarter safety, fitting near the box, playing down in the slot, playing as kind of that covered up money backer that you saw a lot of times in their penny package. A lot of times it looked like a 3-4, but it was just Pepper standing next to the Mike linebacker. Mm-hmm. Duggar, to me, the reason why Duggar is so good is because he's big. He's a big body, but he can play down and back. He's really in the mold of what you would want in a traditional safety, where he can play deep and he's really good at it. He can play man on a slot or a tight end if he needs to, or he can play down in the box. And what that does, really, it gives the Patriots a lot of flexibility in giving the illusion of complexity, meaning, hey, we got guys moving around, but we're really not changing anything defensively. We're just moving where they're going to be, maybe in a certain package or week to week.
And showing that like fake complexity, but having it simple is what makes him so fun to study, because you start seeing the breadcrumbs and the patterns. Then once you put it together, it's like, oh, wait, this actually makes perfect sense. But you'd understand for a defense or an offense that's seeing them maybe for the first time or the first time in a while, it's like, geez, they got these guys all over the place, all these packages. What the hell is going on? So now let's look at it more from, a higher level in the defense overall. When you studied this scheme, what do you think the Patriots really excelled at last season on defense? And where do you think there were maybe some concerns and struggles? Obviously, with the caveat of the fact that Matt Judon and Christian Gonzalez weren't available for most of the
right. Yeah, and to allude to that, I mean, really, if there was one area of concern, it was the pass defense. It just, and it wasn't the elite defense that we've just really come to know with the Patriots. The run defense is always going to be there. I think, Barrymore being up front, just kind of killing everything. You were able, I thought Tavai, the edge, who was kind of that hybrid off ball, but he can be on the ball, kind of that joker guy, that extra guy that you can have. And really what's interesting about that, and this just goes to show you how ahead of the curve Belichick is we're starting to find these kind of 4-3 defenses, which the Patriots really kind of were the past couple years. They kind of transitioned to a 4-down. Is finding this like oddball linebacker that can stand down. I mean, the Chiefs had it in Gay. You've got, I think Sewell was the guy for the Bears. There's different, like really the true 4-down defensive guys. When they want to get into a 5-man front, but they play a 4-3, they find a guy. He was that. So the run defense was just spectacular. But as we know in the NFL, you have to defend the pass. And I think that's, to me, was where the inconsistency was of just on the outside, the matchups. The safeties were all relatively pretty good, but you can see they moved on from two of them. The corners were young guys. Gonzalez obviously didn't play. If there was one concern going into this year, it would be just how is this pass defense going to progress and get back to an elite level that we're used to seeing?
Absolutely. That's something the defense has highlighted, like pass rush specifically, takeaways or areas where they want to improve. And it seems like we're seeing that in the personnel. Like they move on from Lawrence Guy, who was still a monster defending the run last season. I'm kind of studying their nickel defense and seeing him just like take on a double and just shove guys out of the way is crazy. But they seemingly replaced him with an Armand Watts, who really gives you more pass rush upside, which you saw once Judon was out. They didn't really have that outside of Barmore and a bit of, Dietrich Wise and Keon White. And I love that you mentioned Jelani Tavai, who actually just got a 3-year extension, because he actually told us the role that he has. He's called the adjuster. So like you mentioned, he can play on or off the ball. It's such a valuable part of that defense. I'm watching them against the Jets, and you're seeing literally right before the snap, they'll switch the alignment, and sometimes it messes with blocking rules. Like there's a play where Bentley goes unblocked over the middle because they go from a 4-down front into a bear front. Bear just means that all the interior guys are covered, and the Jets weren't able to adjust. Bentley comes free right down the fairway, and it forces a throwaway. So I love that you touched on Jelani Tavai, the impact and the value he brings in terms of not only flexibility, but actually being able to play against linemen and hold his zone and set the edge, and also be productive in space and in coverage. A lot of really good stuff from him. But again, I agree. The pass defense does need to get better. Hopefully some of the moves they've made in terms of like getting Gonzalez back or hoping some guys like Mapu and Keon White step up, that'll help that area of the defense. We got a lot more coming for y'all, but first, quick word from our friends at Game Time. Be right back.
Nothing says summer quite like a live baseball game. And whenever I want to check out a Red Sox game at Fenway, I'm using Game Time, the best place for last-minute deals on tickets. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace for Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. With Game Time, it's as easy as finding the game you want to attend, getting a view of the entire stadium to see what prices look like in different areas, and they actually do you a favor and show you both the cheapest tickets available and the best deals. You can also get the view from the seat that you pick, and between their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, and job loss protection, there's really no better option than Game Time. And with Game Time's lowest price guarantee, the app will actually credit you 110% of the difference if you find a cheaper ticket elsewhere. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
So we mentioned there were some things about the pass defense that need to be shored up. We touched on Christian Gonzalez and Judon coming back. Obviously, those should help. And then the second-year jumps will be big. But from a scheme perspective, was there anything that you saw that you think the Patriots, especially now that they have new leadership and they want to get more pass rush and be a little bit more aggressive, that they can do X's and O's wise to help them improve and kind of get back to that elite pass defense that we are used to?
Yeah, I think just manufacturing ways of getting a pass rush. The thing that Belichick was really good at was just not overcomplicating the defense. That's kind of, if you ever break down what's the difference between Bill Belichick and Nick Saban, typically those guys are always kind of clumped together. Belichick is not going to bring in 3,000 calls into a game. And that's how every once in a while you'll look up and you'll be like, wow, Patriots just got smoked. And it was just, he just guessed wrong on some of the stuff. They didn't have the answers in that week that they needed to. Very rarely did it happen. But the difference really is, for him, was he just didn't bring in a lot. He didn't want to overcomplicate the defense. The defense was more, the complication for the offense was more of how they were leveraging the tools that he had. And I think you touched on it, of just creating and manufacturing a pass rush, maybe being more, hey, we're okay if we give up a little bit more in the run game if it means that we're cutting loose these guys a little bit more in the passing game. And I think that that's really some of these old school coaches that we're seeing in the NFL. That's kind of where that line in the sand is being drawn, is that guys are kind of now realizing, hey, look, if we have a 5-yard run on first down, it's 2nd and 5. That's a passing down. We're going to be okay. What you don't want is what you saw like in times versus like the Dolphins, who are able to just, their outside run game, you get 10, 15-yard chunks on the run game. Those are deep cuts on the defense. Those build up over time. So to me, that's of just unleashing some guys or finding ways to manufacture passers, whether it's moving Keon White inside a few times in some different packages to let him kind of attack a guard, moving him inside on a stunt, again, trying to target some of these guards, make these guards play like tackles on some of this, and just really kind of unleashing that. I think that was part of the problem last year too with the coverage. Was it was not that the coverage was bad. I mean, again, we're talking about a top 15 defense, so they were top half of the league. It was just that pass rush coverage relationship just was kind of tilted more towards, we're not getting any pass rush, we're having to cover a lot more.
And you mentioned Keon White. I kind of want to get into the second-year guys. We've kind of tiptoed around it, but this is their time to shine. So, guy like Christian Gonzalez, obviously we only got a month out of him, defensive rookie of the month, very significant, but also he walked into the league and it kind of felt like, I know we talked about it, where it's like, this guy's crazy talented. It really is just a matter of it translating on the field. I feel like there's not quite as much, what's he going to be? Is he a different player than we saw? I think as long as he stays consistent, we have a good idea. But Keon White and Marte Mapu specifically are guys who took on pretty huge roles for young players. Wasn't great. The numbers should definitely improve. But from your perspective and what you saw, how do you think these guys can take a step forward? And what would you expect from Gonzo, but also from Keon White and Marte Mapu in their sophomore seasons?
The nice thing about this transition is that there's not going to be a language barrier, right? Like it's still Belichick's language. It's going to be implemented. The defense, maybe we're going to call it different things. Maybe we want to try some new things. Maybe we add some things, but in terms of language, it's not going to change. So all these guys are not learning a new defense in year 2. Right? It's just maybe they'll be asked to do a little bit more, maybe even be asked to do a little bit less. You just don't know. But I think with White, the biggest thing with me is he is such a physical specimen. He's almost 280 pounds, 290 pounds. He can move inside. He can play outside. They don't really drop him a lot into coverage like he did kind of in college. In college, they were Georgia Tech was a very simulated pressure heavy team. So sometimes he was dropping in. And I think with a guy like that, just kind of simplifying his role, telling him, maybe, hey, we really want you to be more of a pass rush specialist. We're going to move you inside a few times where, again, you're really just trying to cross the face of a guard or kind of, D that guy up, get by him. I think to me, that's where that transition is going to need to be from him. Obviously, the run defense was there for the Patriots last year. Now we need to start focusing more on the pass rush, and that will clean up a lot of things in the secondary. I think with Mapu is define his role. They need to define it early, and they just need to let him be. You get into these situations with guys, and you see this all the time. Like Isaiah Simmons was a great example of it. Zaven Collins has kind of struggled. I know these are both Cardinals guys, but for whatever reason, they kind of got into this deal where we need to just have these hybrid dudes, and we just don't know what to do with them. We hit on Peppers. Like, people didn't really know how to deal with Peppers when he first came in the league. He really didn't even do that great when he was with the Giants, and he's kind of exploded with the Patriots. And again, leave it to Belichick to find something out. Another man's trash is obviously Belichick's treasure. That's usually how that ends up happening. But to me, you need to clearly define what role he is. Is he going to be a safety? Are we going to move him back? Are we going to play him in that role? Or is he going to be that big nickel spot? Are we going to have him as the money backer, meaning he's going to shadow the tight ends? And so are we going to be a 4-2 team? Is he going to kind of be that answer for us in nickel? I mean, are we going to have a nickel somewhere else? So that with me, I think with him is if they can clearly define his role and allow him to excel at what he's going to do and let him play through some of these growing pains. I think he's talented enough. He's a great blitzer. Obviously, he was when he came from the college level. I think that can be another kind of secret sauce of how you can get some pass rush with that. And Gonzalez, he's kind of a known commodity. He just got hurt. So as long as he continues his transition from injury into this year, which I don't think we'll have that problem. He was a great man corner. They're going to want to play a lot of man at the pay. They've always have with some trap two, with that hard corner trap two stuff, which is usually the complement. So to me, I think those guys have a great kind of a head start for year two, just because the language barrier won't change.
Absolutely. And you mentioned how Keion White and Marte Mapu are guys who can do anything, but it did seem like in the scheme, like for Mapu, for example, when we saw him in OTAs and minicamp, it seemed like he was more that dime linebacker as opposed to last season where you saw him, he was immediately their third safety. And because they use so many 3 safety packages, he was literally playing anywhere from 4 to 5 different roles. And then Keion White, especially once Judon went down, it seemed like he was, Dietrich Wise's backup, but also kind of did some of the things that Judon does. And then once you look towards the tail end of the season, he really was pretty exclusively like another version of Dietrich Wise, where in that 3-3 scheme where they'll have the nose, the defensive tackle, more of a defensive end who can kick inside or play outside. It was really that was his job. And it seems like that's kind of what it's going to be as well. I'm curious, you touched on, the Cardinals and a little bit of kind of positionless football, and you are well versed on what's going on around the league. So I'm curious, are there any trends that you've seen from teams that you think might start to kind of take over the league, especially for the Patriots, where they're going to be under new leadership and maybe they'll be adopting some new principles that we don't yet see on the horizon?
Yeah, I think the big nickel is going to start coming back more into play. We talked about that, really just using a safety down low. I think now you have to carry two, and this is where I think the Patriots have to find an answer quickly. Bryant was very, very good at the nickel spot, one of the better nickels in the NFL last year. Losing him is a big deal. Yeah, no, I one of the most misunderstood positions in the NFL is the nickel spot, because people think it's like Madden. You just move your third corner in there and then, he has the attributes, it works. No, it is a completely different brand of football. In fact, go and look at the 2022 draft, and you have 4 or 5 of the top nickels. And there's a reason why, is because college has finally we're post spread. Right. So these guys are starting to transition in where that have played this nickel position, especially guys like the 4-2-5 and these kind of nickel 3-4s have that's what people run now. And so that nickel spot has really become a place that people know how to recruit it. They know how to develop it. They know exactly what they want. And that trickle up effect now has hit the NFL, where we get guys that can blitz, they can fit the run outside of the box, and then they can also cover, which is what you want. The problem that we're having now in the NFL is, and I think the Ravens did a great job with Kyle Hamilton, is just, hey, we have 3 really good safeties. Which one can play near the box? Hamilton is obviously the size of a linebacker, so having him to be able to play, but then having that quality guy behind him. The more and more I'm getting into these rosters for this year, you're seeing a trend of, we need to have 3 edges that we can rotate. We need to have 3 safeties that we can rotate. Linebacker doesn't really matter. We just need to have 2 of them. And then what you want at corner is, you want to have a man corner and a zone corner. You want to have a boundary corner and a field corner, essentially. But that nickel spot you're starting to see now is teams want to have a true nickel corner that can just play man on the slot. They can move them around, all that, but they also want to start having a safety that can play down near the box. And so I think that that's kind of the trend. That's why I was a little bit surprised, though I do understand, like, age is a factor in all this. Contracts are a factor in all this. Mapu being kind of developing into a safety that they feel comfortable with. Do we really need to have 5, 6 safeties on the roster? Probably not. That's kind of the trend that we're seeing in the NFL, and the Patriots are pretty much aligned in that, of having 3 different guys that can do 3 different things, and so you can mix and match those guys.
Well, you mentioned that because there's defensive coaching staffs that actually specifically have a coach for the nickel position. Yeah. Typically, it's just cornerbacks coach, but because it is a whole new world, because you have linebacker roles, you have coverage roles. And with Miles Bryant, people thought he was bad because he couldn't cover man-to-man, but it was also just how they used him. Sometimes he was just their best option on the depth chart. But you look at Kyle Hamilton, Jabril Peppers, Kyle Duggar, when those guys are in the slot, they're not really being asked to play man-to-man coverage. It's really just zone, so they can be physical, they can reroute, they can play the run, and you're kind of hiding the fact that they may not have the best movement skills. And that's kind of where, in this league where there's so much, everybody wants 12 personnel. It's been that way for a long time, but it seems like now teams are really starting to say, hey, just because this tight end can't block, we can actually use him as a receiver, kind of like a Dalton Kincaid, where that nickel spot becomes important, because like the Patriots have been doing, you can put a safety down there, and if it's a Mapu who's maybe better man-to-man than a Duggar or a Peppers, you can actually have a little bit more diversity and still stay in nickel, but give yourself a little more beef. So I love that you called that out, because that is definitely one of the more interesting trends I've kind of noticed myself. Now, to put a bow on this, we talked about, the ways Patriots can get better, some places where they kind of weren't great last season. What do you think are realistic expectations for this unit, considering they are getting so many guys back? They've committed to Barmore, so you think that he's maybe even going to have a bigger role. What are you thinking we're going to see from this unit in 2024?
I think it will just take, I think what you're going to see in terms of, if we look at the end of the year, where are they in DVOA? How are they in, what are their ratings? I think we're going to see just a slight, I think this is a top 10 defense. So maybe it's not top 5, but it's probably top 10. And probably part of that is just, you don't have Bill Belichick there anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, to me, that, I think one of the things, if there was ever anything underrated about him, which is so hard because he's won so much, but like his ability to go week to week to just completely change the defense, but be able to have that at a high production. On paper, it looks as though they're just reinventing the wheel almost every single week. But in reality, all they're doing is just maybe moving a couple of parts. They're tweaking a coverage. Maybe they're running half of this sync scheme over here, but matching it on the other side, keeping it simple for the players. To me, that teaching aspect and just having that brain in the building to kind of the direction, I think you're going to see a slight step back, but I think you're going to see probably a better pass rush plan, probably a little bit more coverage diversity than you saw, just because I think that that's just the younger generation of coach that we're seeing in. I think if you look at the guys that are as successful right now, they tend to be younger coaches. They're willing to try different things. They're not just stuck in the mud and stuff, some of the stuff, which was always kind of a complaint with Belichick. Now, the one thing that kind of covers all that is that the defense has always been excellent. Mm-hmm. So I do think you're just going to see it. if the offense hits and the offense is successful, they're going to be playing more plays. They're scoring more points. You're going to see the defense kind of you're going to see that kind of a little bit of a step back, but I don't think it's going to be a major step back. I think that you should still be a top half defense. I think the passing coverage should be better. You're playing with less players, just in a sense that there aren't going to be 4 or 5 safeties playing. You're going to have 3 safeties. You're going to have your 2 corners. I think if they got to find the nickel spot, though, that's going to be the one concern going into this season. If they can't figure out the nickel and they have to play with a safety down there, a mop who has to play the nickel the whole entire time, how is that necessarily going to change the defense?
Is there anybody on their roster that you think would be a good fit in terms of the cornerback room for that slot role? Because, Jonathan Jones and Marcus Jones haven't played, but it seems like maybe they slot in there. They've been using Isaiah Bolden in that slot role a lot, although Mayo said they really seem as more of a perimeter guy. So who do you really like for that spot if you had to pick somebody right now, which obviously it's very early. So just kind of, spitballing.
No, I like the Jones pick. I think that's a guy that's played down in there. You got to look at guys that kind of excel in short bursts or in short areas. Here's the thing too, is like the Patriots have kind of transitioned away from a cover one dominant scheme like they have been just so much in the past. And a lot of that has to do with just the way the NFL is right now. And really the AFC East, the way the offenses are right now. It's very hard to play man against Miami. It's very hard to play man against the Bills. And so what you end up having is we got to play more zone. And so what that does is that opens the door a lot of times for more guys to play in that spot. Short, quick burst, being able to carry verticals. They're going to have help, guy, like you kind of mentioned it. You don't have to be a lockdown guy in the slot. You just have to be kind of multiple in what you can do and the tools that you're going to do it with.
And just to kind of end this one, thinking about the coaching staff, because the way I see it with Belichick's defense, it's like if your coaching staff was a 10 out of 10, Belichick makes it a 12 out of 10.
Right.
Because he has so much experience, it gives you that extra edge. How much confidence do you have in Gerard Mayo, obviously head coach, but then the defense really is going to be DeMarcus Covington's, considering they're guys who worked under Belichick for so long. Gerard Mayo has perspective of both being the leader of the defense on the field and then having been one of the co-defensive coordinators. What do you think about that duo and how much they can really get out of this year?
Yeah, I really think that they're going to be fine. You go as long as they can put their stamp on it and they don't try and be Belichick. I think Brian Flores is a great example of a guy that left and was able to just really do his thing with the defense. And he's become kind of, last year with the Vikings, what he did to basically with that roster to manufacture pressure and what they did, they got a little predictable at the end, but I think he would even tell you, hey, we were kind of tied with our hands behind our back. So I do think that there is some success. I just don't want people to think like because of what Matt Patricia did with the Lions and like, oh, okay, well that, and then again with the Eagles last year, like, oh, well that must, that can be the bottom. I don't think that we'll see that just because, I don't think they've already kind of transitioned away from being such a cover one heavy defense. I don't think that they're just going to be knocking their head against the wall and just being like, nope, this is who we are. We're going to figure it out. I think that there's enough that they've done in the past couple of years against some of these offenses that they are seeing that we're going to see multiple things. We're going to, now that Belichick's out of the building, maybe try some different things that can help the players that they have on the field. So I think that this is going to be a good duo. Look, it's kind of like the Ravens. The Patriots are going to play good defense, right? The Ravens are going to play good defense, and they're going to go through their own little transition that they got, or is kind of like, mid-30s guy, hadn't really called it. How's that going to work? But I do think that there's enough skin and, on the wall at the Patriots that I feel like this defense isn't going to take a major step back.
Coach, pleasure, man. This was so much fun. Before I let you go, please let the people know where they can find you and what great stuff you got coming down the pipeline that everybody should be looking out for.
Yeah, appreciate it. If you love defense, go to MatchQuarters.com. So make sure to subscribe. Use the search tool. Just type in Patriots. If you just want to start there, I did a big series on a big 2-part series on Belichick, just the different faces of Belichick and how he changes his defense throughout. I had a bunch of Patriots stuff that has come out in the past couple of weeks, but then I covered the whole NFL. So I'm covering a lot of defenses, trends. If you want to stay ahead of the trend on defense, like you said earlier, there's a lot on offense, not a lot on defense. So head to Match Quarters. You can find me at _Coach A on Twitter, and then Match Quarters wherever else you social.
I learned a lot from you reading your stuff, and I know everyone else will, both from reading and from this episode. So once again, Coach, thank you so much for your time. And thank you all, as always, for watching. Now, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. We will see you next time. Peace, y'all.